Hi, you're very welcome to this session of, let me just go to this one, play with my things here for a second. There we go. Yeah, we'll go with this. So what we're going to do at the moment is you're very welcome to this session on Excel pivot tables, the great favorite that so many people have, all right? Always a good one to have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to begin with my usual PowerPoint presentation. Let me just start here now for a second. Okay, and I just check you can all see my this one. There we go. So this session is Excel Snacks. It's a pivot table, not a pivot. 20 minutes of Excel goodness, kicking it off. We're about 18 minutes in. So let's first of all look, as I like to say, it's not that kind of table. It's not that kind of thing where you have, you know, the bald Ross bringing things up the stairs from friends, yelling pivot at every corner, right? What it is something like this. We can actually kind of summarize all your data, put it all together, and just get a nice little heading on it. Okay. A tiny bit about me. And my name's Anne Walsh. I live in the west of Ireland. My website is called excelexpert.com. I've been a freelance trainer since the mid 1990s. Usually my sidekick Lauros is here as a producer, but today he's traveling, so I'm on my own. I'm the author of Your Excel Survival Kit, Your Guide to Surviving and Thriving in an Excel World. Second edition is out now. All right, great stuff. I've also written a number of bookbone books, create great reports in Excel, get and transform data for data cleansing, create great reports in Word, how to track your training records in Excel, which is going to be out soon. I also love movies, puns, and crime fiction. I've been married for 27 years and I have one son who's a software engineer. And that is one where he can't actually blame his mother for it. Okay. So let's look at what we're going to cover in today's session, 20 minutes. Basically, what is a pivot table? Why would you do it? Okay. And then after that, once I've convinced you of the beauty of it, how would you do it? We'll have a demo, of course, and I'll be sending out the files afterwards. A couple of bit afterwards, yes, it will be recorded, and yes, it'll be sent out afterwards with the file. One more in the current series, that's on the 24th of the 9th, and all the details will be in the email that I'm sending to you. The next one is going to be on what I call a little bit of cosmetic enhancement with conditional formatting. Might lash in an if function as well. I can also ask questions in the chat. Okay. So what a pivot table does with data, it takes a whole heap of data that looks a bit like that and converts it into that, gold, right? Things you can actually make decisions with. You get a picture of what's happening in your business with. That is, and it's one of the primary kind of analysis tools that are available. Couple of things before we begin. Excel assumes data is clean and normalized, and if you're kind of thinking, what in the name of darnation is that? This is what it means: no blank rows, no blank columns, consistent data entry, which basically means that everything should be spelled the same way all the time. Single-celled headings, as I like to say, there's no room for the director's cut in this one, and no totals. So let's look at some common uses. Summarizes and miniaturizes your data, which is one of the best descriptions I've heard. I had a gentleman in the class once and he just said, yeah, miniaturizes your data, best description. If you need to see the total sales by county, area, country, use a pivot table. Do you want to see the sales for a product analyzed by time and category? You've guessed it, use a pivot table. Right? And if you need to see total sales analyzed by customer area, yep, use a pivot table. So anytime you need to summarize large amounts of data, generally speaking, that's a place you'll be using a pivot table. Okay. If you are new to pivot tables, all right, and you haven't got, wait for it, a Scooby-Doo, not even a clue, right? Allow Excel to recommend a pivot table to you, which is insert recommended pivot table. Another thing which I'm going to touch on in the demo, which I haven't got here, is there's a really cool feature in later versions of Excel called Analyze Data, which we're going to have a look at. And in early versions, that feature was actually called Ideas. So it's just a way that kind of generate a set of questions you can actually ask your data for. And then the more experience, you can do it from scratch. I always like to mention at this point that from scratch comes from the idea of when people used to run races. What they used to do was they would scratch a line across, and then it would say that you're doing it from scratch. That's apparently where it came from, according to Wikipedia, so it must be true, right? So let's look at the basic structure of it. Okay, so when you create, the first thing you see when you create a pivot table or insert a pivot table or whatever way you do it, is you're going to see something like this, right? You have the values, and then put what you want calculated here into your values. Then you have your columns. You basically have your headings going from left to right, all right, whatever you want to go in there. You have your rows, goes in there, goes into your left-hand side, and then your filters allows you to narrow it down a bit as well, right? Or you can also use, although what you can also do is you can also kind of use slicers as well, which we're probably just going to touch on briefly. And the thing, of course, is that, you're not kind of as I like to say, this is not a prenup. If you don't like it, you can move it around. And a good starting point is often to, think about, okay, what do I want here and so on. Right. So let's have a look and see what that looks like in practice. Okay, and let me switch here now to my file here, which will be going out to you. Okay. So here I have a file. Hopefully you can all see it. And let me just check now that you can check. Let me just, pressing stop share is not a good idea at these points. So at this point, I've gone in here to this thing called raw data. Okay, so I've got a raw, clean data set. If your data doesn't come in that nice, tidy format, you probably need to use the thing called Power Query, right? And also known as get and transform data. And that's kind of under your data column. That's a place where you can basically remove your columns and all the other unwanted bits and pieces that you have. Okay. So I'm just going to begin, first of all, click into my data set, insert and table. And the reason I convert it to a table is because I want to make sure that all my data, it's easy for me to refresh it and so on. See that it says my table has headers. Yes, it does. Click here. Now, once I've got it done, okay, then I have this table design. And what I want to just look at first of all is that if you're a newbie to pivot tables, the place I would suggest you start is here. First of all, insert. See that it says recommended pivot tables. What would happen here is that Excel will look at your data and say, oh, I think maybe you need this, or this, or this. All right. So what it allows you to do is kind of think, okay, is that what I want? Or, use Spice Girls, what I really, really want. And I say, okay, look, I want to see it by employee. And I click OK. And there we go. That's our little category done there and so on. See, it looks as though most people pay tax except Bryan Cranston. I don't know if that's any relation to the one and only Bryan Cranston of Breaking Bad, although he has an extra E at the end of his name, so I don't think so. So that's how you do it that'd be the one option to do it from scratch. The second option would, if you go to the home ribbon, over here on the right-hand side, you have a thing called analyze data, which is, I suppose, Excel's kind of like AI, capacity, and it allows you to look at your data and say, I don't know, I'm going to have some questions for you. All right, so give it a chance to analyze your data. This is quite a large data set. There's about 85,000 rows in it, but you'll often have that. And you can say, ask a question about your data. Okay, so see, for example, there, what is the most common category? Right. And you see there, it'll actually generate one that kind of matches that. Now, I wouldn't say that it works consistently at all times because this is tech after all, but it's just that if you're starting from scratch and you're thinking, I haven't a clue where to start, this actually might be, fertile ground for just some additional questions. Now, the second part we have, right, once you've got that done, is that once I've got the converted to a table and so on, okay, and let's say what I want to do is I now want to actually do one from scratch, go here, table design, summarize a pivot table, and let's see, I want to see it broken down by, let's say, total including tax by city. So I'll just click on here, on table, and I'll just drag city down to here. Let's say total including tax down here, and there it is done. Okay. And let's say then I maybe want to filter by employee. So a couple of things I'm going to do here. First of all, I'm going to format this, and I use number format to change it to currency and click OK. Okay. The second thing I might do is I could sort it alphabetically. I might say I'm going to sort it by largest to smallest. There you have it. So North Asian is going to be the top one in this case. And just as an aside, if you just want to pick up maybe the top 20, click up here, go to value filters, see there, pick top 10, and just change that to top 20. Because sometimes you just want to see the top 20, and then click OK. Now, once you got that done, let's say then I want to be able to filter by employee. And if you kind of remember that once you've clicked in the pivot table, most of what you need, like basically the other bits and pieces you need, are going to be up here on the pivot table analyze option up here. So I'm going to go up here to insert timeline, or sorry, insert slicer. I'm going to click on, let's say, employee, and click OK. And there we have it. Now, what I often like to do maybe is just put in a few extra rows here at the top. I might just drag that up a little bit. And then if I come up here to slicer, for example, I could change the number of columns, let's say, to 4. And just resize and drag it across a little bit. Okay, and then filter on that. And then what I could also do then is come down here to this one, choose design. Let's say, for example, choose this maybe green down here. I'll just choose this green. Come up then to my slicer up here on the ribbon, and choose the green up here. So I've got I can now then filter by employee as required, and then I come over here and filter to this one. The other thing I probably want to do also is add a chart. So I click here in this one. Again, remember, you just go up to pivot table, analyze, and I go over here to pivot chart. Now, just bear in mind that not every single chart that's available to you in Excel is available to you as a pivot table. For example, if I go down here to Sunburst, these ones, particularly the newer ones down there, for example, like Box and Whisker, Waterfall at the bottom there, they're really not going to be available to you too much. But let's say I could choose maybe, let's say, clustered column, and then click OK. And I probably knock that total off, remove it, and then resize a little bit. And then obviously then you can kind of come up here and then resize it accordingly. Now, if I want to kind of keep going with the green theme, I can then click over here, see the little paintbrush, chart style, choose the color, and I might need to go down to one of the greens here. All right, let's choose that one. Heavy on the green, I'm afraid. Okay, and I'm just going to resize this a little bit because ideally you kind of want to get those so that they're, yeah, so you're always kind of in a bit of a battle. You can see there, we've been having it so, I might make that a little bit bigger. Yeah, size 6 font is kind of small. 8, that's kind of slightly better. 8, yeah, it's not too bad. So I might go down another little bit. That's one of the things I kind of hate about this. You can spend a lot of time kind of just, you know, trying to fill in around, get it to work a bit better. There you have, filter it like so. Now, once you've got this bit done, kind of got your pivot table done, let's say then you come back then and you get new data. Okay, so go back into my data here. Now, what I can do at this point is, for example, let's say I've got my cities over here, I've got my employees over here. Let's say, for example, what I want to do is basically change, let's say one of these cities here, replace Trilby with Galway. Why not? So click up here, Control F, choose Trilby, and replace it with Galway. Go replace all. Basically, if you make any kind of changes to the data, yes, 423 of them. And if I go back then into my pivot table, there's my cities, right click and refresh. Now Galway may not appear here, but let's check up here my row labels and I search for Galway. There it is. Right. There we have it. It's not in the top 10 at all. Okay, the number should be there. We'll clear the filter then again. And let me just sort this now in alphabetical order. So just right click, sort A to Z. Yeah. Do you know what it does sometimes? But now it's done this at this. All right. Now I'm intrigued as to why it hasn't given me Galway. Let me try that again. Go back into my data. I know why. I should have done it in the raw data. That was where the data source was. So Control F, paste it here. Yeah. Okay, and then I go back into this one, right click and refresh. There it is. There's Galway there. Now, that kind of should be enough actually at this point, like to give you kind of a sort of a kind of an idea of how, let's say I go here to my value filters and just make it top 10 this time. Yeah, that kind of makes it kind of tidier. So that should be enough at this point, just to give you a flavor of what your pivot tables cover. Okay. Now, let me see anything else on this one that I can just mention. Yeah, those are kind of possibly the main things that you kind of need for your pivot table, right? Just the design, the insert, and so on. So I'm just going to stop the share for a second. I want to see if there's any questions. You want to pop anything into the chat? Okay, all right, lovely. So we have some in the chat. Okay, lovely, Taryn. All right, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I hope it hasn't put you off pivot tables for life. That's kind of like this one here. All right. Okay. Good stuff. We're back again. All right. So this kind of is enough. Yeah. So at this point, kind of that would be enough to do it. Just to say to you as well, I do actually have a book on pivot tables coming out with Bookboon, hopefully by the next kind of month or so. And I kind of do kind of more in-depth stuff on it, a bit more kind of like tying things together and so on. So again, I hope you found this useful. I'm even kind of finishing a little bit early, which is always good. And I hope you enjoy your lunchtime and mind yourselves and take care. Bye. Slán.